So hi everyone, welcome. So this is my coach's thoughts on the Old Ghost Road Ultra. This is part 5, I believe. So this one's about tapers, race plans and reviews. Before I go into it, there's one thing I just wanted to make a comment on. Look, I get that this is my first ultra marathon and I've picked a pretty hard one. But in all honesty, the thing is that I've been an endurance athlete for 30 years and I'm used to racing for over 10 hours. So when I entered this, while it's a whole new world, it's a case of I do have a lot of background history in endurance sport. And it's interesting at the moment, there seems to be a lot of people out there, and I have no idea where they're getting their advice from, but there's a lot of people signing up for marathons, Ironmans, half Ironmans, ultra distance racing with zero experience or athletic background. And, on some level, I think a lot of those people are setting themselves up for failure. And I think that you cannot underestimate how hard this stuff really is. And I just want to make that clear that, I don't want to make the stuff look easy because it's not. And if you're the person that's seeing this and you think you can have a go, you need to be fully aware that this stuff's really brutal. There's no other way to say that. I might gloss over it over days and say, "Oh yeah, that was a hard day." That means it was brutal. And I just wanted to make that clear because, I'm terrified for this race on some level. Yes, no. More probably, I have a huge amount of respect for what is going to come. And the fact is that from 50 to 85 kilometers is going to be really ugly and it's going to be brutal. But that's what you sign up for. And so I just want to make that clear that if you're thinking of this, by all means, do it and you're capable of doing it, but it might be a 2-year plan. You need to go and learn this, and that's regardless of whatever it is event that you're signing up for. There's a bunch of social media influencers out there, signing up for this stuff and doing it probably badly and kind of glossing over how hard it is. And, like for this build, I think I've done, what's the number? It's about 1,800 kilometers of running and it's about 21,000 meters of vertical since March when I kind of started easing back into proper training. So, there's a lot of mileage gone into legs to get ready for this. So I just want to clear that up, that, you know what I mean? It's like, this stuff's hard. Be prepared, because otherwise you're setting yourself up for failure. So now back to taper time. So less than 2 weeks out. And the key thing about taper is it's an opportunity to rest up and recover. You still need to move, but ultimately it's about achieving freshness and recovering and letting your body absorb the load that you've put into it. But it's not a time to panic train. It's like 2 weeks out from any major endurance event, you're done. Everything there on in is just ticking boxes. Personally, I've just had at the weekend, my Achilles just flared up a little bit. It's a little bit angry. And so I've actually had 3 days off, just settling that down, and I'll do an easy chest run tomorrow. Am I worried about it? Yes and no. It's more just the size of the Achilles and it's a bit puffy. And I think it'll settle down by the weekend. So by next week, race day, I should be good to go. It's just the nature of the beast. I think there was a lot of vertical in the last couple of weeks. So I think the load's just been a little bit much. So, and that's the thing. It's like most of the people training for these sorts of events are dealing with some sort of niggle at some point. And that's where your taper is. It's about recovering. I've got a massage booked on Monday, so that should help as well. So it's one of those things where it's about recovery, and it's about getting fresh, and that's fundamentally it. So it's a bit of a longer taper because the run load is a lot higher than when you're doing cross training for triathlon, for example. So it's a case of the really cool thing about a taper is when you get it right, you know, the couple of days before the race, you are feeling awesome, and that is a wonderful feeling. So bring that on. Can't wait for that. So race plans. So I want to talk a bit about race plans. I think it's important that you do a race plan for an event like this. And what that should really, like I do one for every race. I've got my one for this race is about 5 pages. And so what that entails is it entails some things for the day before the race. So I've put down that, you know, I've got to be at registration for here. I've got to be at race briefing. So those details. Then race morning, I've kind of mapped out the plan for alarm, breakfast, loading up, where to catch a bus. So make sure I'm there, what I do when I get to the race start, what my jobs to do are, and then my actual race plan of how I want to execute the day. And that includes my nutrition plan as well. So I think the thing is that, and the race plan is usually targeted for the specific course. So for example, like for this race personally, for me, it's about completing, not competing. You know, I'm there. I've never done something like this, so it's going to be a whole. You know, that back end's going to be a whole new world of discovery. But I still want to be the best version of self. So that hence the race plan. And fundamentally, the first part of the course is rolling, and then all the vertical is in the back half, or most of the vertical. So the reality is, it's about being patient, and that's one of the key messages in my race plan, is just to calm the farm for the first half of the race. You know, be careful at the start not to trip in the dark, and then when I implement my nutrition plan, and then the nutrition plan has, as the day goes on, I have contingency written down for ideas of what I want to do later in the day. So for example, the back end of the course, Ghost Lake Hut, which I think we had at about 67 k's in, or something like that, 67 k's in, somewhere around there. Depending on how my stomach is, I will either switch from using the Tailwind product that's on the course to maybe one of my flasks filled with water and one of my flasks filled with Coke. And then at the last aid station, it might be water and Coke, or it might be Tailwind and Coke. It depends on how my stomach is. I know from experience in Ironmans that late in the day, you can get a little bit of GI distress or stomach distress. So it's a case of I have some contingency in my plan for there. And you know, most of it's about the back half, and the front half is about just calming the farm and being controlled. Little notes to myself, for example, if I get held up on some of the bridges where there's only so many people allowed to cross, the note is don't panic, take fluids. So use the opportunity where I can't go forward to actually take fluids. So there's lots of little bits of those little thoughts that I've put down in my race plan, and I've also written sort of kind of ballpark times, which I've actually printed off a form for my wife so that she can jump online to the Facebook Live, and in a rough window when I hopefully will be coming through. So that's the sort of the, you know, write yourself a race plan, write down all the things, you know, make sure you've got a checklist of things you need to take. You don't want to get all the way across to the West Coast and realize you've left your running shoes, or your emergency clothing that you need to take, or your nutrition. So, you know, that should be part of your race plan. You know, and there's things like the day before the race, if you're trying to hydrate, one of the things I always do is I'll hydrate with like an electrolyte, but with no sugar. So rather than taking sports drink, I'll take like the Hi-Fi Zeros, or the Noon tablets, or the Goo product, where they're electrolytes, because you run the risk, if you just drink lots of water the day before a race and you're trying to hydrate, you do run the risk of flushing your salt base out, and that could mean cramp city in the race. So that's things like that. And I actually have done a guide on how to execute a good Ironman, and it's not finished yet. I've got to finish off the bike stuff. It's just been a bit busy. So there's some stuff in there about that as well. So by all means, go and have a look at those. So the other thing I want to talk about is writing a race review. So, you know, at this point of the build, where I'm tapering down, and a part of it is I've just looked at of what I've done from a training point of view, and started thinking about that. What could I have done better? And so I always write a race review for a Ironman or a large event when I'm doing it. And there's a couple of reasons that I do that. First off, it gives me closure. And what I do is I write about my build-up, what I thought was good, what I thought was bad, what I thought I could do better. And sometimes that's life happens, so you can't change that. So it's not a beat up on self. You have to just look at it objectively, and you highlight the good and you highlight where you need to improve. Then I break down the race and I go through the race and I write what was good, what was bad, what my thoughts were, what I thought I did really, really well, what I thought was needs work, and just my overall impressions of the day. And then I write down, if I was doing this event, what I would do going forward, and put some thoughts on that. And then, an overview of things I need to work on. And to put in context, I've done this for years, and I did an Ironman, and I was really underdone, and I really faded out the back end of the swim. And I made notes about that, and because that affects the first half hour of the bike. And the next Ironman build I did, I kind of had read those notes and thought, right, I need to address that. And I had a bit of a change in my training program where I added in one really long swim, and it was up to about 6K. And the thing with that, making that change based on those race notes, is that my next Ironman, when I got out the water, I swam the time that I wanted to do, and I felt like I'd done nothing. And it actually set me up for a really good day. And it's one of those things where there's always learnings, and there's always things you go, what can I do better? For example, I'm already thinking this build in a whole, and the fact that I'm there to complete, not compete. And I need to remind myself that I just need to let the Type A guy just disappear for this race. But I've already started thinking about, if I was to do this to try and compete, I need another year's running, honestly, if I wanted to be that person, and I need to drop another 5 kg. Straight off the bat, that would be the two fundamental things that I would need to work on, and more speed work, because that's the thing in this build. I'm aware that where I was starting from and where I needed to be, that speed work's very high risk. So I've done some pace work, which is quite a bit different. It's a little bit more controlled, or slower, for want of a better term. So I would like to do a lot more stuff to open up my hips and get some more speed and mobility, and that would be the three things I would need to do straight as part of a plan if I wanted to do this again. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I might just go take up drinking beer and playing darts after this. But I just wanted to share those thoughts, that, you know what I mean? The reality is if you're doing this race this time round, or you're thinking of doing it in the future, just remember, and any event, a taper time's not a time to play catch up. It's a time to rest and recover. Write yourself a race plan. It's vitally important that you have some contingencies in that race plan, and write notes to yourself. And then the other thing is, at the end of the race, a couple of days after, sit down, write yourself a race review. It'll give you closure, but it's a handy resource at some stage if you want to go and do the event again, whatever the event is. So I will do a post-race thoughts in a couple of weeks' time. God knows what state I'm going to be in coming out the other side of this. So it's a case of the work's done now. So it's just a case of resting up, getting fresh, sorting all the little jobs I need to do, and go racing. And that's enough from me. And if you are doing the race, good luck, and I will see you at the start line. See you later. Bye-bye.